Two cities under fire in the same night. Two urban centers, both crowded, both heavily watched, both supposed to sit beneath one of the most advanced air defense networks in the world. And yet the images coming out of Israel are showing something that official language never fully captures in real time. Impact, smoke, shattered buildings, emergency crews racing through debris, and civilians once again learning what it means when a regional war stops being a headline and becomes a sound above your roof. Reuters has published images from the aftermath of Iranian retaliatory strikes, including damage in Bnei Brak, while wider reporting shows the confrontation has expanded across Israel, Iran, Lebanon, and the Gulf. For the first 2 minutes of this story, forget the talking points and look only at the pattern. This was not a single blast that could be dismissed as an isolated breach. This was part of a broader campaign of repeated missile and drone attacks that has forced multiple governments to confront the same question at once. How long can any defense architecture keep pace when the attacks do not come as a one-off event, but as successive waves designed to stretch response times, interceptor stocks, radar coverage, and human decision-making? Reuters has described Iranian retaliatory strikes reverberating across Israel and Gulf states, and recent imagery shows that places like Bnei Brak were not untouched edges of the crisis, but part of the visible impact zone. That is why tonight matters. Not because one side suddenly discovered the existence of missiles, and not because the world is seeing war for the first time, but because the visuals are cutting through years of assumptions. The promise behind every major air defense system is not that nothing will ever get through, but that enough will be intercepted to preserve deterrence, confidence, and daily life. When repeated strikes still produce burning streets and visible destruction, the public begins to ask a different kind of question. Not, is the system there? But is it enough for the scale of the war we are now in? That question is growing louder because the conflict is no longer contained to a narrow corridor. Reuters and other recent reporting show it has widened into a regional confrontation, with missile and drone strikes affecting Israel, Lebanon, Gulf states, and U.S. interests. Now let's break down what these attacks appear to say strategically, without exaggeration and without pretending every unanswered question already has a final answer. The core point is not that Israeli defenses have vanished. The more credible and more serious interpretation is that sustained pressure can create openings, especially when waves are timed, layered, and calibrated to test response capacity over time. Reuters has previously reported on Iranian claims about methods intended to complicate Israel's multi-layered defenses, and current coverage continues to show that some strikes are indeed landing in populated areas despite those defenses. That does not mean every defensive layer has failed. It means even sophisticated systems can be strained in a fast-moving, high-volume conflict. The choice of targets, or at least the visible geography of impact, also matters. Tel Aviv carries financial, political, diplomatic, and symbolic weight. Bnei Brak, densely populated and adjacent to the Tel Aviv metropolitan area, turns the story from a strategic message into a human one. When strikes or debris hit such areas, the message is not confined to military planners. It reaches families, commuters, local businesses, schools, religious communities, and an international audience watching footage on loop. Reuters photos from Bnei Brak underscore that this is not a distant battlefield image from an empty desert expanse. It is urban reality, with emergency responders moving through the aftermath where ordinary life had been taking place. And that is where the pressure shifts toward Washington as well. The United States is not a distant observer in this crisis. Reporting from Reuters and other outlets describes a broader U.S.-Israel military campaign against Iran and the regional consequences that followed, including retaliatory missile and drone attacks and rising fears of deeper escalation. That means every successful strike against Israeli urban centers is not viewed only as a blow to Israel's immediate security posture. It is also read as a test of American-backed defense credibility, American deterrence theory, and the wider assumption that superior technology can control escalation once a conflict has crossed several red lines at once. This is why official statements in the hours after such attacks often sound strangely disconnected from the images on the ground. Governments talk in terms of capabilities degraded, launchers targeted, assets destroyed, and responses under review. But the public sees apartment blocks, damaged roads, shattered windows, emergency sirens, and rescue crews. The state communicates in assessments, the civilian experiences in impacts. And in moments like this, impacts speak louder. When two cities appear in the same news cycle as symbols of vulnerability, the narrative of control becomes harder to maintain, even if military officials can still point to successful interceptions elsewhere. Reuters' current and recent coverage reflects exactly that tension. A powerful military confrontation still being narrated by governments, while visual evidence keeps dragging the conversation back to the cost on the ground. There is also a deeper strategic lesson emerging from repeated waves of attacks. Modern wars are no longer judged only by territory taken or aircraft destroyed. They are judged by endurance, stockpiles, repair cycles, public morale, alliance cohesion, and the capacity to keep functioning while under pressure. If one side can keep generating waves and the other side must keep absorbing, intercepting, repairing, and reassuring, then time itself becomes a weapon. Even without proving every claim made by partisans online, the current reporting is enough to show that this conflict has entered that kind of endurance phase. The region is no longer reacting to one dramatic night. It is adjusting to the possibility of many more. So where does this go next? The first path is escalation. More strikes, more attempts to destroy launch infrastructure, more pressure on military nodes, and more risk that the battlefield widens faster than diplomacy can catch it. The second path is covert de-escalation through intermediaries, where governments publicly project strength while privately searching for a pause before the damage becomes politically irreversible. The third path is the hardest one for leaders to admit, reassessing whether the original theory of quick dominance still fits the reality on the ground. Recent reporting already points to global concern about wider war, displacement, oil market disruption, and the expanding human toll in multiple countries. That tells you this is no longer a conflict any major player can treat as neatly bounded. And that may be the most unsettling part of all. Wars often begin with confidence and continue through adjustment, but the dangerous phase comes when the public can see that the old assumptions no longer match the new battlefield. Tonight's images push that realization closer, not because one side has won everything, and not because the other side has lost everything, but because the illusion of clean control is getting weaker with every new wave. When missiles and drones continue to produce visible damage in dense urban areas, people stop asking whether the conflict is serious. They start asking whether anyone involved still has a reliable map for how it ends. Reuters' latest coverage and photo reporting do not support the loudest online claim that defenses are simply gone, but they do support a more sober and consequential conclusion. This war is stressing the region's defenses, alliances, and political narratives in ways that are now impossible to hide behind slogans. What we know right now is enough to say this much. Iranian retaliatory strikes have hit Israeli areas, including Bnei Brak. The confrontation has widened across the region, and the consequences are no longer theoretical. They are visible in smoke, damage, displacement, and a rising fear that every response is laying the ground for the next one. The people watching from Washington, Tel Aviv, Tehran, Beirut, and beyond are all performing the same calculation now. How much more can be endured before military logic collides with political panic? That is the real story tonight. Not a clean victory, not a neat collapse, but a dangerous proving ground where every new strike tests not only weapon systems, but the credibility of the leaders who said they could manage this.